Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait a few more seconds to let people register or get online for a few minutes. So bear with us just a few more seconds as people start rolling in. All right. I think it's a good time to get started. We got the ASL interpreter going, so she's hopefully gonna make me sound great. I am Dr. John Chang. I am I have to allow me to say it, I am a distinguished professor. I just got that title this last year. So at East Stroudsburg University, I am a clinical psychologist for the last 30 odd years, and I am also a board certified rehabilitation psychologist. In the image I have, I'm an Asian male individual. I'm dressed in red. I'm balding. I'm losing my hair, and I'm sitting in my office with a bunch of books that are a mess in my background, 2 chairs. So welcome to my home office, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming on. And today's webinar is probably about 45, 50 minutes. I'm going to try to talk about some of the information. I am again, clinical psychologist by trade. So I'm going to give you a lot of information. Obviously, don't memorize any of it. It's all going to be on recorded for you guys to look at both now or later. And also, I'm going to try to focus on what I do better, or what I'm better at, which is mental health. I'd like you to come out of this talk understanding, having mental health education and practical knowledge of how to manage your life, hopefully for the better. I've received many questions, and I'll try to address them as we go through the webinar. Feel free, though, to post any questions, add anything during our process. More interaction I get, the better. And it makes me, it motivates me in some way to have a better talk. Today we're going to talk about inaccessibility. That is just another word for the inconveniences of our life. Tell me if you agree with this, that the world is built on visual and mobility capable people, right? So if you can see and if you can move, you're usually have the freedom to do whatever you want in this world. Without those two things, you're gonna have to go through some struggles. And the question is, how do you take all those things you have to work hard on against and make a better life for yourself? So we're going to talk about some of the different categories. I just came back from a vacation for a couple of days, and I went to a accessible condo, and when I got there, the shower had 6-inch lip. To get out to the porch, or there was a 3-inch lip on that. So I had to improvise by creating a miniature ramp, and I did not shower. I don't stink, I hope, but I bed bath for 6 days because the shower wasn't accessible. I mean, these are the inconvenience of trying to have a quality of life. I mean, the other option was to stay home, because everything at home hopefully is accessible, but then you don't get to enjoy the quality of life of meeting new people and going somewhere new. And so there's definitely a balance. And how do you not get depressed by trying to figure that out. So, all right. So I have my assistant here, Jackie. She's my academic assistant. She's going to be helping me walking through some of these things. Next slide. So on this slide, I just have a picture of a little blue house. You know, the top 5 things about our life with mobility impairment, if it's from spinal cord injury, if it's from stroke, if it's from MD, it's housing is a key aspect of our quality of life and comfort. Most homes are not accessible. I say to a lot of friends that, you know, I've only ever been invited to one person's home where they intentionally build a ramp for me to come in to go to their house. Not a lot of friends will do that. I mean, even your great friends, they just don't modify their homes for you to most of the time they come to my house or they go to your residence. So you know, you're gonna have to get used to that. You know, on my slide here, it says 0.15% of domestic housing in the US is wheelchair accessible. Absolutely. And then there's a reason why there's a step. It's because they don't want rain. They want to be a little bit higher aspect. So, you know, we have to find ways to problem solve that. Now, in my life, I have several little ramps that I carry along. Not carry along, but I have it available if I know if I'm going somewhere to, you know, to assess someone's house. If I'm going to a restaurant, if I'm going to somewhere, I always call ahead to find out what is their capability in managing my electric wheelchair. So, you know, there's a lot of self-advocacy you're going to have to do throughout this whole process. And there's a great videos that the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, along with Shepherd, they just posted and created these a few weeks ago. That's really good at giving you real specific questions to ask when it comes to self-advocacy. And I'll briefly touch about that. But my focus is, again, expectation, psychological. Please have the expectation you don't get that you're not going to get in anywhere that's going to have housing for you. You're going to have to adapt. You're going to ask all the right questions, but have the expectation that you will have obstacles. Okay. What happens when it comes to communication is that a lot of times people have the wrong expectations, and you have to have appropriate expectation when you. A good example is, you know, if you have a partner and you think they're going to come home and take the garbage out, and they don't take the garbage out, you get upset, right? Or on Valentine's Day, you expect someone to bring you flowers, or and they bring you chocolate. I don't know. It's not that the issue is difficult. The fact that the expectations are not congruent. So I'm going to say to you, start thinking about that. You're going to have to problem solve any housing or travel issues of another location. Then you're not going to at least be disappointed with the process. Because I do want you to travel. I do want you to go to other places. Now, all of us need to have housing, so that's a given. Okay. Another area. Next. Well, public transport. I'm going to go right off the back and say, look, paratransit is really good. Many of you, how many of you have ever been on paratransit out there on my chat? Yeah, you know, yes or no. If you can answer that, because I've been on paratransit. I love paratransit because they pick you up at your house and take you where you need to. You know, the negative part about paratransit is that you aren't the priority. You know, there's a lot of different other people going on at the same time. So, but going on to public transport now, it's a funny thing. 99% of buses are equipped to accommodate passengers, which is great because most public buses I've been on have actually been pretty good in a sense. I have not been on many railways and subways, and they seem to have less favorable. Yeah. Okay. James said it's too bouncy. You're absolutely right. Depending on the type and type of vehicle you're in, it can be really bouncy. Depending if you're in a lot of pain, that's not good for you. But public buses are nice if you know the routes. And navigating them may be a little harder. Trying to figure out how to get in the subway in Boston or New York was hard. I had to figure out, what was the best access for me to get in there. But again, it's nice that if you had a question, one of the questions pre-podcast is that he asked was, he uses public transportation, but they get full quickly. We had, and by the fact that the places get full quickly and you're not a priority, you're not getting in. And obviously being in a wheelchair, you're going to take up more space. So, and that's a frustration. Now, the resolution, the person who wrote the question that they're going to hopefully get a vehicle. Oh, wow. Yeah. It's always nice to have your own personal vehicle. Now, traveling, when it comes to flying, I did a whole nother podcast on flying, and I have never not had my wheelchair not damaged when I flew. And I try to find every way to get around that, wrap the joystick, put labels, inevitably something always happens by the time I get to the other. And that's a hard part, because you can talk to the people and at this airport, and you go to another airport and they're not hearing you yet, and they're going to bring your chair out, and that's scary. I have a friend named Spencer who's going to Italy for the first time, and he's like, oh my God, I got straps, I got this. So he's hoping that he can get there without falling apart. I have to say to you, when I was just recently hospitalized, I had an opportunity to talk to some peer mentors, and they were around my age, had been in a wheelchair for 30 some years like I have. And I said to them, look, what is your, and again, James says airlines are atrocious. Absolutely. So I said to the mentors, what is your solution for travel when it comes to airplanes? And you know what? I was quite surprised, but not surprised. They said, both of them said, we do not fly anymore. The stress of flying is so difficult that they relegated to traveling by car. And they also said that, look, you're not going to find rolling showers everywhere. You're going to have to bed bath, or just get away with that when you travel. So, and in some ways, that's where I landed, is that if I don't have to fly, I tend not to fly. Hotels have accessible showers, rolling showers, but they're very few. So, next slide. Oh, medical facilities. Oh my God. I just spent a whole bunch of weeks in the hospital. And I'm going to tell you, you think that'd be the first place where we can have accessibility and people who understand us. 56% of California medical facilities were fully accessible. 43 of them facilities had some barriers to access. When I go to a local medical facility for an X-ray, I have to really give them a heads up saying, hey, look, I'm an electric chair, because they have to lift me onto the table. So self-advocacy, call them up, let them know, hey, these are things I need. And there are maybe tons of places that can give an X-ray, but only very few that have the manpower to help get you on a table. Really self-advocate about what you need. Now, sometimes even myself, I don't want to be a bitch. I don't want to look like a bitch. I don't want to sound like I'm a jerk. But at the end of the day, you need to be incredibly assertive about what you need, because if they don't, they will walk all over you, or they will assume that they know more than you do. And here's my question. How many of you have experienced that in a medical facility where you go in and they do not seem to understand, they sort of imply that they know everything. Have you had that experience? And would you like to share that experience? So anyway, so any one of you, Susan says always. So any of you want to, can we get them on live, answer live if we need to? Looks like we can, right?
Yeah, I can also open up the chat where they can chat with the panelists if you would like, Dr. John.
Yeah.
In the Q&A.
So any one of you, James or Susan, who want to come and talk about your experience, love to hear it, because I don't want to be the only one saying that this is my life, because I know there's plenty of you out there who have experience. Really, from a professional side, like as a psychologist or a medical side, you need to listen, you need to hear them out. And from the personal side, I usually do what I say, look, I apologize for to sound like I'm going to be a jerk, but here are the things I need to in order for this to work well. And so Susan going to come on for a second. So let me hear some experiences from Susan, if that's okay. Can you put her on, Kelly?
Yes. Susan.
Hello.
Hi, Dr. Chang.
Hi, Susan. How are you doing?
Can you hear me?
I can.
I'm doing great. I'm in northern. I live in northern Michigan, about 5 hours north of Detroit, and I
Okay.
live very close to Lake Michigan. So I'm a 10 para. I had a spinal stroke almost 50 years ago. So I'm one of the old timers and have dealt with breast cancer, osteomyelitis, lots of other things, but really glad you're looking at the lifespan, because in the old days, there weren't many of us that lived and thrived this long.
Absolutely.
And now that the overlap, yeah.
And the sad part is that as I'm getting old, I'm requiring more and more needs from medical issues. Are you still there? Okay, we briefly have a technical issue there. And so Ronald said she had gotten into a verbal altercation with a hospital staff. I'm gonna say that's unfortunate, but that sometimes has to happen because they got their blinds on. They're just focused on what they need to do, and they're not hearing that you're coming in with your special needs. And so you want to bring her on, Karen? You want to answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. Here we go.
Okay, hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, Dr. Chang, thank you for sharing with us. My name is Ronell. I'm a C4, C5 quad in South Florida, specifically Miami, and I'm going into 8 years in my power chair. And yeah, I've gotten into shouting matches almost with some of the care providers. In South Florida, we have the Jackson Memorial Hospital, which specializes in spinal cord injury, and outside of their therapy wing or the rehab wing, the rest of the hospital has no idea how to deal with patients who are wheelchair users. There are whole parts of the hospital that don't have Hoyer lifts. They don't know how to do transfers. And I understand if it's a different hospital completely that may not have the training, but if your hospital specializes, you would think they do. And now I'm tasked to have to explain to them the care, and you have PCAs or CNAs who are arguing back with you. And, I try to go in as pleasant as possible and, as politely as I can, but you end up having to call for the nurse, and the nurse doesn't listen. You have to call for the charge nurse. She doesn't listen. Then you're talking to the clinical manager or the nursing manager and trying to explain to them all your issues, and they're telling you no. And even sometimes with the attending doctor themselves, I'm like, I'm not undermining your work and your specialty, but I've been living with this spinal cord injury for a while, and I'm trying to explain to them how to do, or how to assess my needs. And you end up arguing, and this is like in the middle of dealing with autonomic dysreflexia, dealing with really bad UTIs, or I had actually, you said you had surgery, oh, you're in the hospital. I had surgery earlier this year for a flap, and I'm there in crazy pain, trying to explain to them what to do.
Ronell, I just had a flap surgery for 7 weeks in the hospital.
Okay, so yep, I was in there for 45 days. Yeah.
Oh man, so I am, sir. First of all, I say I'm saddened to hear that you have to go through that, but you know what? I am sort of proud of you for being assertive to go up to the chain of command, because sometimes you need to, right?
Yeah, definitely. And again, I have family in healthcare, so I always try to approach very understanding, very respectful. They have other cases, but whenever I get that pushback, and then I realize my care isn't where it needs to, then I kind of put on a slightly deeper voice and be a little bit more demanding as to, hey, this is what I need, this is what's going to happen, or I'm going to have to go above your heads.
You know what? Maybe that's what I made, mistake I made. I didn't use a deeper voice. So, but you're right. But and those are listeners out there, when the Ronell and myself, who just recently went through a big, not, it wasn't a surgery that was bad for a flap surgery, but it's the time.
Yep.
It's long and really frustrating. But I did the same thing. I had to go up this chain of command when the things were not, and I was in a rehab that was very good. It should have people who are very understanding of things, and that did not happen. So, which forced us to be more self-assertive on these things. So, but thank you, Ronell, for sharing that experience and how you sort of problem solve your way up, even though you didn't want to do that at the time. And maybe it made you look like a jerk at times, but you did it because you need to for your health, especially if you're having autonomic dyslexia and all these things.
Thank you, Dr. Chang.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Thank you. Okay. So yeah, so again, South Florida, run out, Michigan, everywhere. Yeah, this is not an isolated incident. This is a common factor. It's like housing. Medical facilities is just another place where you need to learn. Now, you're going to look at, the Kessler and the Shepherd videos, and there are an incredible amount of options for you to answer. The issue for me as a psychologist is, do you have the assertiveness? Do you have the ego strength? Are you willing to look bad for a few seconds so that you don't medically feel worse? Those are the parts from me as a psychologist say, how can I help you be like that? How can I give you more self-esteem and feel like you are allowed to say those things? A lot of things you're going to say are already backed by law. They just don't know that. And you need to let them know that these are things they have to manage with you. So, let's see. Next, we're going to keep moving on here. Education. Now, here is my field. Educational institution. When I went to college, and I've been in a lot of different colleges and universities, I had many. Well, I have one building I could actually get in to some of the different floors. Most of the buildings I only had one level. I had one elevator in the entire campus. And I was the first person with a disability on that campus. So again, I'm dating myself. It's a long time ago. But what happened is at that time was the school worked with me to accommodate me. They moved classes to the first floor. But those are obvious things, But other things like note taking and extra time or bathroom, those took management of me and them interacting regularly to even caregivers. When I'm at my university and right in the beginning of the semester, I'll get emails from Office of Disability Services about what students need, what accommodations in my class. And not all professors are willing to be as accommodating. That is true, especially in the larger classes, the big classes. I think the smaller classes seem to do well. Certain institutions are geared for people with disabilities. I remember people asking, well, maybe you should go to this school, maybe, because they're set up better. So you have to really pick and choose what educational institution you decide to go. Accessibility to buildings are, probably a big factor, but another factor is probably how do you manage the course? Let's see, Karen says, how do you deal with heavy light bathroom doors are prevalent in newer buildings? Oh man, you are absolutely right. Yeah, you can't physically manage them because they aren't intentionally heavy. That's the only other option is to ask for an assistance, for someone to help open that door for you. Because none of my school doors, except for one that was automated, I had to relegate at the time to going to classes, usually when classes are changing. I rarely went to classes like in between class or late, because I knew by the time I get to the door, there was not going to be anyone there to open the door. So you had to really figure out a pattern of problem solving. When you're in a public building, hopefully there's people around that's going to be able to help you. Most people want to help, they just don't know how to help. So that's my personal experience. Okay. Again, suitable accommodations at the university, appropriate ramps, automated doors. Okay. The tension on the door can be adjusted for a clicker automatic. I got locked in wow. For 5 hours. That's a long time, Susan. And yeah, the tension probably could be, and again, that's something, if you're comfortable and willing to talk, that would be great to talk to the people at the building, because that's something they probably weren't aware of. So self-advocacy, you solve the problem for yourself, you end up solving the problem for many individuals. Okay. All right, that is. Next, I want to make sure I get to the psychological part. So here's public spaces. I have a picture. I didn't, last slide, I'm sorry, I had a picture of a university, public buildings. This slide, it's just a crosswalk with a handicap sign. Most public spaces, at least I've been exposed, especially in the South, are accessible. The older places like ramps, curbside, especially if it's in an older city like Philadelphia. I was in a section of town, or Boston. It's harder. The curb cuts are not always there. You may have to go down the block. Again, you should expect others to try to make everything accessible, but don't expect that you're not going to have to adapt or adjust. Okay. If you've gotten to this point in life, and like some others who have, Susan, who have lived long as we do with our disability, you've learned to adapt. You've learned to already figure out there are things you have to do differently. And curb cuts are not always an obvious thing. You might go all the way down to the end of the block and you can't get off the block. You have to go back, go around. Most places are 48% are inaccessible in this country. In 2020 study for sidewalks. 56% participant on another study report accessibility as one of the main reasons for using online websites. I tend to agree with them. Amazon stops here all the time. Amazon Prime, because I don't want to go out and have to buy these individual things. So I'm grateful for that. So absolutely, if you can manage that type of online purchases. So next slide. Okay, so now we're getting to the picture. I have a picture of 5 little individuals, one with an orange color, and the picture is more demonstrating that we need to be around others, but when you're by yourself, then there's social isolation. I don't want, or I prefer, I hope not, many of you who've ever had depression because you're alone. But the fact that you can't get out, the fact that it's hard to get out, it's hard to travel, makes it that you become isolated. Now, having the internet and video has helped, but there's nothing like being in front of someone. When during the COVID, I had to teach online for 2 years, and man, being back on campus was incredible. The energy of seeing someone walking around, engaging, instead of being on this little screen on a box in the corner. It's so different. Teaching face-to-face is so different from online stuff. So what I want to say to you is has the fact that your life has so many things ahead of you, inaccessible things, has that isolated you? Has anyone be willing to say that they've experienced that in their life online there, that isolation has been a big factor in your life? See, 2021 study found that individuals with physical disabilities are significantly more likely to experience loneliness, social isolation, and low social connectedness. How do you solve that? Okay, you have to go find people of similar likes, with your hospital, with your rehab. There's support groups, there's peer mentors. Okay, you got to get around people. Okay, especially people who understand you. Okay, and again, right now have tried to find ways to avoid socializing. You should not be alone. Now, there was a recent study I saw that individuals with quadriplegia have less suicide attempts than people with paraplegia. And the rationale for that was that individuals with quadriplegia, we tend to have people around all the time. So it isn't that having social support or people around is a great way of finding ways to be mentally healthier. Okay. Okay, possible source of help, Susan, bring it up, Human Rights Commission. Okay, disability rights, hospital groups. Yeah, there's a support group for everything out there. So next slide. Susan is a plethora of information. Awesome. Thank you, Susan. All right, so depression and anxiety are top 2 diagnoses that in the country that, right now, currently, anxiety is about 17%, depression is 12%. If you're a person with a disability, that jumps up to 50 to 75%, depending on what study you look at. If you're going to have a chronic disability, you're going to suffer probably some aspect of depression or anxiety. Okay. Cynthia writes, as my mobility decreases, I find myself choosing to forgo social occasions. Should I go to this theater to be or be comfortable at home? Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Is it easier to stay home and or should I go out? And Cynthia, if you want to come on, I'd love to talk to you about that, because I love to tell you, I like to at least recommend what I think, and you tell me if you agree with that. But as a psychologist, I would say that you better off going to the movies than to sit at home. And the reason I say that is you can sit at home anytime during the week. But if you get to go to the movies that one time, that's going to make a bigger difference in your depression, your anxiety, and your isolation. Even though it's physically more difficult to manage. So, yes, frustration and stress, as you and I know, stress is the more stress you have, the more likely you're going to be physically ill. That is a direct correlation. If you don't treat your depression, it's going to come back even worse. And as a person who just went back to college for my 6th degree, I think that's my 6th degree. I just finished a postdoctoral master's in clinical psychopharmacology. And what I've learned from taking 2 years of schooling on pharmacology is that in mental health, try therapy first before you try the medicine. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people just throw antidepressants on you. But that is not the best way to solve the problems. You should try psychotherapy first. If that doesn't work, and then try combination of therapy and medicine. And so that's my 2 years of education on that. Great. Let's see. Moving to the backyard. Yeah, absolutely. James wrote that, just, getting out. I used to walk around the block. Well, I didn't walk, I rolled around the block when I was in Florida because the weather's always so nice and they don't have a lot of potholes like they have in Pennsylvania. But, just to get out and get around was important. So, okay. Next slide. How are we doing? Let's see. Jeffrey says, what is the best way of finding a therapist who's also disabled so they can better understand your issues? Jeffrey, I agree with you that, and maybe I'm biased, that a person with a disability that is a therapist definitely would have better understanding of the process. And I would, and again, I'm biased. It's not that there's not competent therapists out there who that are in the training that can't do the work. They could. I've met many of them, but there's something slightly different than when you speak to someone who's also in a wheelchair and you're in a wheelchair, or someone who has MD and they have it, or it's just different. And there's an automatic connection there. How do you find someone? Well, that's a hard one because you can go onto your state and get names of rehab psychologists. And they're familiar with rehab areas and people with disabilities, but they're not going to identify that they're a person with a disability. Now, in my description of myself, I see people online. I put that I am an individual with quadriplegia, so I put it out there. So you're going to have to do a lot of Google search for that, and maybe be able to find someone who has, we're calling the rehab themselves and asking them, are there any individuals who are therapists and have a physical limitation? So that's what I would suggest, Jeffrey, because I do think that having someone with a similar background makes it a lot easier. So you don't have to explain as many things as sometimes I tell people. So coping, this slide, I have a slide of images of people looking at each other. And yeah, you got a lot of things to self-advocate, but the common theme on the whole process is what I call locus of control. And locus of control actually, and here's my only claim to fame. It was designed by a famous psychologist named Julian Roeder, and he was my mentor up at University of Connecticut. And Dr. Roeder wrote that you have to focus on the things you can control and not the things you can't. What does that mean? Well, for example, a lot of times we talk about the weather, right? How's the weather today? What's the weather going to be like tomorrow? And if you're talking about the weather because you feel like you can't do anything because it's going to rain, or you can't do anything because it's going to be hot, and then that's external locus. Okay, that's some that you can't control the weather. Okay, it's out of your control. So you can talk about it, but don't put in a view that you need to control it. But if you have the issue of controlling the concept or be able to influence it, that's internal. For example, you can control what you eat. You can control putting up getting an umbrella. You can control about putting a jacket. So we tend to think about things we can't control, like other people, right? We're always frustrated with our friends, our sisters, our parents, and you have no control of what they do. What you have control of is your relationship with them, how you talk to them, what you ask. And that will help you reduce your anxiety. That will help you reduce your stress. And that will give you a better quality of life. You can't control how your body feels, but you can control exercising. You can control dieting. You can control certain things. So focus on the things that you can control. Now, granted, inaccessibility is a systemic issue. Okay, it's a big problem. You know, it's a visual mobility world. And being disabled, you are not part of that world very well. It's a systemic, but you can't focus on the big issue. You got to focus on smaller parts and what you could, when you call to those advocacy groups, that is controlling what you can control. Okay, so those are things I would suggest in focusing on. Okay, when you get into a dilemma, ask yourself, can I control this issue? Do I have any influence? So, has anyone else uses coping skill, uses facet in their life, or at least attempt to? I have to tell myself a lot of times when I get overwhelmed, I said, all right, can I control this issue? Where's my locus of control? Now, the other thing that I didn't put on this website is ways of coping. Ways of coping is a coping skill brought up by Lazarus and Folkman up in Berkeley in the 1980s. And Lazarus said, there's problem focus and emotion focus. Okay. Problem focus would be like, hey, I have a flat tire and I need to figure out how to change the flat tire. Okay. Emotion focus is like, okay, I don't know how to change a flat tire, but I'm getting anxious. So I'm going to deep breathe and bring my anxiety down. Okay. All right. Emotion focus does not solve the problem. Okay. Problem focus does. Okay. Cynthia wants to share, so I'm going to call you in a second. So Lazarus says, and the research shows that if you're better at problem focus than emotion focus, you're better adjusted in life. So you need to find ways to problem focus in your life. So locus of control and problem focus are two key coping skills I hope you get from today's talk. And Cynthia, you want to come on and share something with us today? Can you hook her on?
Yes, and this is going back where you talked about accessibility. I'm not in a wheelchair yet. I still use a rolling walker, but our church had such heavy doors, especially in the bathroom, especially getting in and out of the building. And I fell one day trying to maneuver and hold this door and keep it open. Anyway, I don't know if that was the reason, but last year the board chose to install the push button where the door is automatic. Oh my god, it made such a difference.
Wow.
I joke now about how I go to the bathroom whether I want to or not, whether I need to, just to do it. And it wasn't just as easier, but I'm independent.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm sorry that you fell because of that door, but did you go to the board and say, hey, can you do something about this? Can we solve it?
I did not at the time, but a few key people saw me fall. And I've been very active in past, and so I'm sure the word got out there. And meanwhile, in the last year, I'm now part of an accessibility task force.
Awesome.
So I gave myself a unpaying job, and part of me says I don't want to do this, but it's mostly the part that says I don't want to be in a position where I can do this, and that's part of that whole denial. But that's my learning process. So thank you, Dr. Chang.
No, that is great to hear that your experience, and it sounds like you had good supporting people to recognize that something had to be done. And a simple, now granted, a lot of times these things are based on finances.
Oh
But
yeah.
But if they had the money and they put the door, the push button. Now, just please, Cynthia, don't spend too much time in the bathroom, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you for talking.
And just we're fortunate, not fortunate, we lost a beloved member who had put a sizable contribution to be used as needed.
Oh, wow.
So, fine.
Yeah, well, great.
Game changer.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next slide. Thank you, Cynthia. All right, so strong social support. Cynthia just brought this up. She didn't actually go to a group, but a group of people around her realized that it is important for her to have that. She jokingly said that she goes to the bathroom even if she doesn't have to, just so she could experience the independence. And independence is obviously what you and I want throughout our lives. And as I gotten older and getting more ill and getting more medically debilitated, I tend to want to be independent even more. So, even the act of being open the door and closing the door is it made her feel good. I totally support. Having strong social people, having a great family. Not everyone has that. When I work in rehab, and a lot of my patients who have strokes, this is the big litmus test. I used to see, okay, who's going to be around, who's going to step up to help the family transition home, or is the person going to be isolated and go into to a nursing home? Social support is a complex thing. It's an interaction with you and others. How well you treat your family, how well you treat yourself throughout your life impacts who's around you. I have been fortunate. I had some great individuals around me throughout my life. And I moved around a lot different in the country, but wherever I went, I've always been found these neat individuals who've been a big factor in my quality of life. So I want you to work on your social skills, work on your communication skills. If you don't have a lot of people around you, go to therapy, find out why, and find a way to be a better person and engaging, empathetic, be compassionate. The things I like about individuals who are compassionate and kind, surround yourself with people like that. And first of all, you have to be like that first. So, social support, pivot road, growth of self-esteem, independence, quality of life, and a protective factor when it comes to hardship. Absolutely. Okay. Next slide. Okay. I talked about self-advocacy throughout the whole PowerPoint today. There's a great video series about next slide from and the link is on here. I think they'll post that on next slide there on the social media. Hold on. It's so there is a slide coming up about the process of self-advocacy that the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation and Shepherd from Georgia put together. That's really good. I just reviewed it yesterday, and it has really good suggestions. So please take a look at that. But using social media support is not a bad thing. I use Facebook groups to learn things. I post things, ask questions. You can get a support group online. So even though you can't get out there, even though you can't drive somewhere, so use social media to your advantage. Don't always be on TikTok, even though I think there's some funny videos on TikTok. But yeah, use that to your advantage. Control what you can control. Problem solve. Okay, next slide. So here's the self-advocacy resource, 7-part series, covers a lot about healthcare, employment, transportation. I talked about transportation, education, healthcare, and housing. Employment is a whole nother ballgame. And they're going to talk about, should I get a job? Should I not get a job? And what should I ask if I do? I'm from a biased psychologist myself. Having a job gives you self-esteem. Having a job says that you could be more independent. Now, it is a little hard, though, in the sense of, wow, why should I work so hard and get paid so less when I could be on Social Security disability and get paid a little bit less, but I don't have to work? And I'm going to say to you, work. Okay. I'm going to say work. Working in an area you like, you get to interact with people, you get to meet people. There's a lot of benefits of working. And so I'm going to say to you, if you can, and you can, and you physically can handle it, work. Go back to college, go back to school. If you aren't working, and James says, I kill to work. Well, I'm saying to James, get yourself back in school if you can. Find a career that makes sense to you, and get a job, because there's so much psychological positivity if you can work. Okay. That is my slide today. That's my presentation. Locus of control, problem solving, 2 areas that you need to learn if you are going to be successful with a long-term lifespan disability. Okay. I work full-time as a peer advocate. Awesome, Tori. That is a perfect job, because it is something that you'll be good at it. You have experience. Now I'm going to answer some of these questions, pre-registration questions, for a few minutes to you, see if I can answer. So if you have any other questions for me, please join, post it. If you want to join online, love to hear your voice. So one question says, Dr. John, how to help with anxiety, depression, and quadriplegics? I'm going to tell you, those 2 things are going to come hand in hand. And see therapy first. Find someone who's board certified in rehabilitation psychology. Find someone who is a peer mentor. Talk to them. Try therapy first. If therapy doesn't work, then do therapy with medicine. Okay, but definitely try therapy work first. So that's my answer to anxiety and depression. Ronell says that he works visual accessibility tester. Awesome. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but that's great. What's another question? What coping skills are needed when you're facing inaccessible and lack of concern about inaccessibility with non-disabled? Yes, non-disabled peer individuals probably don't have the understanding of what you need. You need to educate them. You need to educate them in a nice way as best you can. It's hard to educate them when you're in a big heated battle, but when you get to be around individuals in a calm time, educate them. That's the best time to learn. How do you deal with a senior who doesn't want to comply with medical requests? Ooh, that's a tough one. You know, I have a mother that I'm taking care of who sometimes don't want to take her medicine. Okay. It really depends on their level of cognitive capacity. Okay. Sometimes it's not their fault if they're experiencing dementia. So it's hard to answer that question without going into hypotheticals. My first suggestion is that if the person has to have the medicine, are there different ways of getting that medicine without having a battle every day? Some medicine you can take once a week, some you can take once a month. So there are different versions of that. So talk to your doctor first and find out what medication, tell them what you're struggling with, and they may be able to give you a different version or a different form. Okay, no dementia, just stubborn. Yeah, okay, so my suggestion is then you're gonna have to go into what we call positive reinforcement. So reward them somehow when they do something that you like, you know, and when they do it, you can't say you're gonna do it. You just sort of give them this a little reward when they actually do it. And now remember, if you're not demented and they're cognitively intact, they are actually have a right to make stupid decisions. And sometimes that's going to happen, and you need to not feel guilty about it. If you put the meds out, you know, and they don't want to do it, it's on them. It's truly on them. And I probably would have loved to hear you talk about that today, but we're going to have to catch them another time. Okay. I am 16-year-old. I've been caregiving for my mother with ALS for 3 years now. What advice can you give someone to remind them to be patient? How long? Then it turns out I'm like, wow, 16-year-old, and you're already a parentified. You're a parentified child. Basically, you are a child that is caregiving for a mom. And first of all, I'm going to say that I am. I'm proud of you for, you know, for being there for your mom. I mean, you're old enough to know what you know, what is necessary for her life. It's a hard disorder to live. It will influence your view of life for the rest of your life. There's no doubt about that. I hope there's someone around that you can help support you. Ask for help. You know, you can't do this alone. And you know, reach out to people around you. Reach out for the ALS support groups around in that area as well and see what's available. I mean, you're doing a lot of things what adult should be doing for you. So I wanted to mention to wonderful 16 caring for mom that I am ALS and have a peer mentor program. If you helpful to her, she not assessing it already. There you go. So take a look at that. Emily seems to have at least some help that's available to you and a support group and to provide a little bit. So she has ALS and she's compassionate care, ALS. There you go. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, everyone. I won't be able to see all the questions. Please join me for the next talk when we have in the future. Even there is an evaluation at the end. Give me some suggestions. Let me know what I did well. Let me know how I can make it better. Thank you. Have a great life. Enjoy. improve your quality of life. Remember, locus of control, ways of coping. Make sure you know how those coping skills. Thank you. Bye-bye.